At 75, you stop seeking the company of others? Would your life improve, or would it become lonelier? This is a question many older adults face as they enter the later years of life. In today's video, we will explore why some elderly men and women choose solitude over social interactions. Rather than isolating themselves out of sadness or loneliness, many seniors find peace and fulfillment by avoiding certain social settings. Through personal stories from real individuals, we'll dive into the reasons why. At 75, I began to see life from a completely different perspective. They realized that true freedom doesn't come from the number of relationships or crowded gatherings, but rather from the ability to choose what truly matters to them. In the past, I often felt obligated to attend social gatherings and maintain relationships, even when they no longer brought me joy. But now, I no longer feel the need to do so. I understand that seniors who embrace solitude aren't lonely or disconnected. Instead, they are experiencing a new form of happiness, one that comes from peace and independence. This doesn't mean cutting off all connections with the world. I still love my family, and I still cherish meaningful friendships. But I've also learned that silence has its own value. Let's get started. 1. The power of peaceful solitude. At 76, Grandpa Richard had always been an extrovert. He firmly believed that the key to a fulfilling life was staying socially connected. Even after retirement, he continued attending family gatherings, meeting up with friends, and participating in neighborhood events. He thought that the busier he was with social activities, the more meaningful his life would feel. But over time, he realized that instead of feeling energized after these gatherings, he felt drained, tense, and sometimes even completely exhausted. At first, he didn't understand why. The events he once loved now felt overwhelming. He felt pressured to always be cheerful, always be engaged in conversations, and to maintain the image of a lively, sociable man. Slowly, this exhaustion took a toll not just on his physical health, but also on his mental well-being. One evening, at a family gathering, surrounded by laughter and lively conversations, Richard suddenly felt like a stranger among his loved ones. He smiled, nodded, and listened to the chatter around him. But deep inside, he longed for quiet. He wanted to leave the crowded room and go home, where he could sit alone in peace. For the first time in his life, Richard began to wonder, am I sacrificing my own peace just to meet social expectations? A shift in perspective. It was not an easy question to face. He had spent his entire life believing that a good life was one filled with relationships. But now, he felt like those very relationships were draining him instead of fulfilling him. Richard decided to experiment with small changes. He started declining some invitations, spending more time at home, reading, going on solo walks, and reflecting on his thoughts. At first, he felt uneasy. He worried that he was isolating himself, that others would think he was withdrawing from society. But the more time he spent alone, the more he realized that solitude was not loneliness. It was a kind of peace he had never truly experienced before. Embracing a new kind of freedom. Gradually, his anxiety about always needing to be present at social events faded away. Grandpa Richard started paying attention to what he truly wanted. He enjoyed peaceful mornings with a cup of coffee rather than rushed breakfasts with friends. He preferred quiet afternoon walks in the park, listening to the rustling leaves rather than forcing himself into noisy conversations that no longer interested him. He discovered that he didn't need to be in a crowd to feel that life had meaning. He only needed himself, his thoughts, and the tranquility that solitude offered. At 76, Grandpa Richard understood that stepping away from social crowds did not mean cutting off his social life. It simply meant prioritizing himself. He no longer felt guilty for saying no to invitations, nor did he feel pressured to attend events just to avoid judgment. He carefully chose the gatherings he genuinely wanted to be part of, and the conversations that truly mattered to him. And surprisingly, he felt happier than ever. Lessons from Grandpa Richard's story. Stepping away from social events doesn't mean being lonely. It's about making time to connect with yourself. Not every relationship or social gathering is necessary. Prioritize only what brings you real joy and meaning. Solitude is not a loss. It's an opportunity to rediscover peace and clarity. Learning to say no to things that no longer serve you is an act of self-care. Now, Grandpa Richard still maintains good relationships with family and friends, but he only dedicates time to what truly makes him happy. He no longer chases after social gatherings or meaningless small talk. Instead, he lives the way he has always wanted, peacefully, freely, and fully immersed in the quiet joy of his own company. Story 2. The Journey of Setting Boundaries. At 78 years old, Grandma Mia had always been the heart of every family gathering. For years, she was the one who organized all the major celebrations: birthdays, Christmas, and weekend get-togethers. She loved her family deeply, and taking care of them made her feel valued. But over time, the excitement that once fueled her began to feel like a burden. She was exhausted, yet she couldn't say no, fearing that if she stopped, no one else would step up. During every holiday, instead of enjoying moments with her grandchildren, she found herself overwhelmed in the kitchen, preparing food, setting up tables, and worrying about every little detail. She tried to make sure everyone was happy, but in the process, she neglected her own well-being. What used to be joyful celebrations had turned into stressful obligations. Yet, Mia kept going because she feared that if she stepped back, her family would be disappointed in her. The breaking point one Christmas, after spending the entire day preparing a feast, she barely had the energy to sit and eat with her family. Her body ached, her head felt light, and for the first time she realized she couldn't keep doing this. That night, lying in bed with pain radiating through her body, she asked herself, "Am I doing this out of joy or just out of duty?" The next morning, she made an important decision. She would no longer host large family gatherings. At first, she felt guilty. She worried that her children and grandchildren would be upset, that family traditions would fall apart without her. But to her surprise, when she shared her decision with them, their reaction was not what she had expected. They didn't blame her or express disappointment. Instead, they understood and respected her decision. One of her children even said, "Mom, you've done so much for us. It's time for you to enjoy these gatherings instead of just preparing for them." Choosing balance. Over burnout. From that moment on, Grandma Mia began setting boundaries. She no longer felt responsible for organizing every event. Instead, she chose to attend only the gatherings she truly wanted to be part of. And if her children wanted a big celebration, they would take care of it themselves. At first, breaking old habits was difficult. She had spent decades feeling responsible for making every occasion perfect. But as time passed, she began to feel a sense of relief. She no longer ended holidays feeling drained. Instead, she could finally enjoy the company of her family without the weight of endless preparations. Grandma Mia also learned to say no to invitations that didn't feel right for her. If she wasn't in the mood or didn't have the energy to attend an event, she simply declined, without guilt. She realized that saying no didn't mean she loved her family or friends any less. It just meant she was learning to love herself first. Lessons from Grandma Mia's story. Setting boundaries is necessary. No one can do everything forever. Learning to step back is not giving up, it's self-care. Not everyone expects you to do it all. Sometimes, the pressure we feel comes from our own expectations, not from others. Saying no is not selfish. It ensures that when you say yes, you are fully present and truly enjoying the moment. Prioritizing yourself doesn't mean abandoning your family. In fact, when you are healthier and happier, you bring more value to the people you love. Now, Grandma Mia's life feels much lighter. She no longer exhausts herself planning big events or tries to meet everyone's expectations. Instead, she enjoys every moment with her family without the burden of responsibility. And most importantly, she no longer feels guilty for putting herself first. Story 3. The Burden of Superficial Relationships. At 75 years old, Grandpa Charles once believed that a meaningful life was one filled with many relationships. For years, he was the first to show up at events, the one who always kept in touch with old friends, and the person who never turned down a social invitation. He took pride in having a wide network, knowing that he could call and meet up with anyone at any time. But over time, he began to realize that not all of these connections were truly valuable. There were gatherings where he left feeling empty rather than joyful. Conversations revolved around trivial gossip and repetitive stories, where no one really listened to each other. There were friendships where he was always the one making the effort to stay in touch, while the other person only responded out of obligation. Slowly, he understood that having many friends did not mean having deep, meaningful connections. The turning point. The shift happened after a lively reunion with his old friends. The afternoon was filled with laughter and nostalgia, but when Grandpa Charles left, he felt more exhausted and lonelier than ever. He realized that despite spending hours with people, not a single conversation had been truly meaningful. He couldn't share his deeper thoughts, nor did he feel any genuine concern from those around him. Sitting in a crowded room did not mean he wasn't lonely. That feeling stayed with him for days. Why was he holding on to these relationships? Was he simply clinging to the past, afraid that if he let go, he would have no one left? But then he asked himself, is it really worth spending time and energy on relationships that no longer bring joy? Choosing quality over quantity. After much reflection, Grandpa Charles decided to make a change. He stopped reaching out to people who only treated him as an afterthought. He declined invitations to gatherings that he knew would leave him feeling drained. Instead, he focused on the people who truly cared about him, those with whom he could have meaningful conversations, those who genuinely listened and understood him. At first, he was afraid. He feared losing friends, becoming isolated, and feeling disconnected. But something unexpected happened. Instead of feeling lonelier, he felt relieved. Rather than wasting time on meaningless interactions, he had more time to enjoy his own interests. He read more books, took long walks, and even started writing, something he had put off for years. Most importantly, he spent time with those who truly valued him, even if they were just a few. Lessons from Grandpa Charles's story. Quality matters more than quantity. Having many relationships does not mean having deep, meaningful connections. Not everyone deserves your time and energy. Prioritize those who truly care about you instead of maintaining shallow relationships. Letting go of unhealthy relationships does not mean loneliness. Sometimes it creates space for better connections or allows you to enjoy your own company. Learn to release the past. Not everyone who was once important in your life needs to stay with you until the end. Now, Grandpa Charles no longer tries to please everyone. He carefully chooses the relationships he wants to keep, and in doing so, he has found a sense of peace. He understands that being alone does not mean being lonely. It is an opportunity to reconnect with himself and with the people who truly matter. Story 4. The Journey to Finding Peace in Solitude. At 78 years old, Grandma Lily had always been a social woman, constantly busy with gatherings, family meetups, and community events. She believed that staying socially connected kept her feeling young, mentally sharp, and far from loneliness. However, as time passed, these interactions no longer brought her the same joy. Instead of feeling warm and happy, she often felt exhausted and empty after attending social gatherings. At first, Grandma Lily refused to admit it. She feared that if she withdrew, people would think she was isolating herself. She worried that if she stopped attending events regularly, she would be forgotten. What she didn't realize was that the exhaustion and stress from constant conversations were making her feel more distant from herself. One evening, after a lively family party, Lily returned home with a heavy heart. The echoes of laughter and conversation still rang in her head, yet she felt no happiness. She sat quietly by the window, gazing at the soft moonlight filtering through the trees. In that moment, she realized something she had long forgotten. Silence can be a gift. not an emptiness to fear. From that day on, Grandma Lily started embracing solitude more intentionally. She allowed herself to enjoy peaceful mornings with a hot cup of tea, without the interruptions of phone calls or a packed schedule. She took solitary walks in the park, listening to birds chirping and feeling the cool breeze on her skin. The moments spent alone no longer frightened her. Instead, they brought her a deep sense of tranquility. At first, her family and friends worried when they noticed she wasn't attending gatherings as often. But instead of feeling lonely, Grandma Lily felt more energized than ever. She realized that solitude was not isolation, it was a space where she could reconnect with herself. She also began dedicating time to personal activities she had long neglected: reading, journaling, and meditating. These quiet pursuits allowed her to truly listen to herself, instead of getting caught up in endless conversations that drained her energy. And something magical happened. The more she appreciated silence, the lighter and happier she felt. Lessons from Grandma Lily's story. Solitude is not a sign of loneliness, but an opportunity to rediscover inner peace. Social interactions don't always bring energy. Sometimes, moments of stillness are what truly restore us. Spending time alone doesn't mean rejecting the world. It creates space to better understand ourselves. Stepping away from constant socializing doesn't mean losing connection. It allows for more meaningful relationships, including a deeper connection with oneself. Now, Grandma Lily no longer feels pressured to attend every gathering. She understands that sometimes silence is the greatest gift she can give herself. She no longer fears being alone because she has discovered that true peace comes from within, not from endless conversations or external validation. Story 5. The Journey of Prioritizing Personal. At 80 years old, Grandpa Anthony had always been an active and highly social person. He firmly believed that a meaningful life was one filled with relationships and constant engagement in social activities. In the past, he never turned down an invitation, whether it was a gathering with friends, a family event, or a community party. He loved the feeling of being surrounded by people, believing that it kept him youthful and energetic. But over time, Grandpa Anthony began to feel that something was off. Even though he still attended these gatherings, the excitement was gone. Instead of feeling energized, he often came home feeling empty and drained. Conversations became repetitive. Meetings no longer brought him joy, and he started questioning whether he was wasting his precious time on activities that no longer added value to his life. Yet, the thought of saying no to invitations made him uneasy. He feared that if he withdrew, he would be forgotten. One day, after returning from a gathering with old friends, Grandpa Anthony sat down and reflected on his experiences. He asked himself, "Why do I always feel so exhausted after these meetups? Am I truly enjoying them?" The answer surprised him: no. He realized that he had been spending too much time maintaining relationships and engaging in activities that no longer brought him fulfillment. In doing so, he had neglected something far more important: his personal growth, passions, and the simple joys that made him truly happy. From that day forward, Grandpa Anthony decided to make a change. He reduced unnecessary social obligations and focused more on what truly mattered to him. He rekindled his passion for reading, writing, and painting, interests he had abandoned for years due to his busy social life. He enrolled in online classes, exploring topics he had never had the time to learn about before. The most incredible part? Instead of feeling isolated, Anthony felt more alive than ever. He realized that happiness doesn't come from having a packed schedule or countless social connections. It comes from living a meaningful life in a way that feels right for you. Lessons from Grandpa Anthony's story. Not all relationships or social activities add value. Choosing wisely is essential. Investing in personal growth helps us rediscover joy and purpose in life. There is nothing wrong with turning down invitations that don't genuinely bring happiness. Happiness isn't about the number of relationships we have, but about how we choose to enjoy life on our own terms. Now, Grandpa Anthony no longer feels pressured to maintain a socially busy life. He has found true freedom, the freedom to spend time on himself, to learn, to explore, and to fully embrace life in the way he desires. Story 6. The Power of Peaceful Isolation. Grandpa Mark, at 78, had always been a family man, present at every important occasion. He attended every birthday party, every family gathering, and weekly meetups with old friends. His entire life, he believed that staying socially connected was the key to happiness. But after retiring, he began to feel a shift within himself, a longing for quiet, for space, and for time alone. At first, this change worried Grandpa Mark. He feared that if he started turning down invitations, his family and friends would think he was distancing himself, or worse, that he no longer cared about them. Was he becoming isolated? Was he hurting the people he loved? These thoughts constantly circled his mind, leaving him conflicted. But then, one day, as Grandpa Mark sat alone in his small woodworking shop, he realized that those were the moments when he felt truly at ease. He enjoyed the stillness, the focus of crafting intricate wooden pieces, the satisfaction of working with his hands without the need for small talk or forced social interactions. He began to understand that solitude wasn't a negative thing. It was a choice to reconnect with himself. From that moment on, Grandpa Mark changed the way he approached life. He didn't cut off relationships, but he learned to manage them in a way that suited him better. Instead of feeling obligated to attend every event, he carefully chose which gatherings truly mattered. Instead of spending entire days moving from one social commitment to another, he allowed himself time to stay home, tend to his garden, create in his workshop, and simply enjoy the peace of his own space. The most surprising thing? Grandpa Mark didn't lose his connection with his loved ones as he had feared. In fact, he found that he was happier, more relaxed, and that each interaction became more meaningful because he was present on his own terms, without pressure or exhaustion. He learned that healthy isolation isn't about cutting people off. It's a form of self-care, a way to recharge, and an opportunity to appreciate what truly matters. Lessons from Grandpa Mark's story. Isolation is not loneliness. It is a choice for inner peace. Not every social gathering is necessary. Prioritize meaningful relationships. Spending time alone doesn't mean distancing yourself from loved ones. It means creating balance. Quiet moments can restore energy, improve mental well-being, and lead to a more fulfilling life. Now, Grandpa Mark no longer worries about drifting away from others. He understands that making time for himself isn't selfish. It's an essential part of living a happier, more fulfilling life. Conclusion. Living peacefully and independently after 75. Looking back on my journey, I realized that aging is not about loss, but about embracing a new opportunity, a chance to find peace and live in alignment with what truly matters. Solitude is not a sign of loneliness. It is a choice that brings freedom, allowing us to focus on what holds real significance. From Grandpa Richard, who discovered tranquility in moments of solitude, to Grandma Mia, who learned to set boundaries to protect her health, and Grandpa Charles, who prioritized quality over quantity in relationships. Each of us has walked our own path to understand that life is not about meeting others' expectations, but about living in a way that feels most comfortable and fulfilling. After 75, life is no longer about pleasing everyone. It's about prioritizing yourself, taking care of your health, and cherishing each moment fully. Learning to say no to unnecessary gatherings, choosing relationships that truly add value, and dedicating time to personal interests does not mean withdrawing from life. It means creating a life that is meaningful and enriching. If you find yourself stepping away from the fast-paced social life of the past, don't worry. It's not isolation. It's a gift of freedom and peace. Embrace it in your own way and remember, it's never too late to live the life you truly want.